Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. In this week's episode, we're going to set up some leaf-tailed gecko enclosures. That's not overseas type exotic leaf-tailed geckos. These are some true blue Aussie leaf-tails. So stick around, and I hope you enjoy. So these are my 3 leaf-tailed gecko enclosures currently. I just quickly threw these together just in time for getting the actual lizards in, because the lizards did come with the actual enclosures themselves. But I'm going to spend a bit of time now planting these out, putting some backgrounds in there, just making them look a little bit more homely rather than these stock standard basic looking exoterras. Not that I actually don't mind the look of this. It would be pretty cool if you were keeping some like Strophosaurus species and something set up like this. But I just thought I'd give you a quick look at these as they are right now. So as you can probably tell, each of the enclosures there has a nozzle from a Mist King system. I've got a big reservoir of about 20 litres of RODI water there, just so I don't get the calcium deposits on the glass itself. And then we've got our tubing connecting the 3 enclosures together up here. Something else I've also got on the top here is I've just got a couple of basic LED light strips. These are going to be enough for some low light plants. But something else that you might see and you might think is a little bit odd is these fans. So most of the time we're trying to heat up our reptiles. In this circumstance, I'm trying to keep them a bit cooler. The reason these guys are actually upstairs in the bedroom, probably much to my wife's dismay, is because the garage gets way too hot to be keeping leaf tails in. So these fans up here, they're actually connected to a thermostat. So once the temperature reaches a certain temperature, usually about 29 degrees, they'll kick on and they'll actually just cool down the terrariums a little bit in conjunction with the Mist King system. So without any further ado, I'm going to take these geckos out of these enclosures and take these enclosures downstairs into the garage where it can be a little bit messier, plant these out before I bring them back up. So I've brought all the exoterras downstairs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just take out all the branches and everything, water bowls, all the rest of it. But what I am going to do is I'm going to leave the coir peat in the bottom of it, probably just push it towards the front because it's still brand new and usable. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to use double-sided tape. I'm going to cut some sections of this background here and put it in the back so the lizards have got actually something to climb on. This is just a cheap foam background I picked up off eBay. To be fair, it's not the best quality background. So down the line, you know, I may swap it out for some nice cork bark backgrounds or something in here. But I spent a lot of money on these lizards. That's about all I had left budget for background for the time being. The other thing that I've got going on is we've got a lot of live plants to put in these here terrariums as well. So hopefully by the time that I've got all the plants in there, you're not even going to be really looking at the background too much. So let's crack on. I'm going to cut these up and we're going to tape them into place in all 3 of the terrariums. And then we're going to start rinsing some plants and start planting these little terrariums out because I need to get these guys into them again. Something else I did fail to mention, and I do want to talk about it before we start, is these pieces of wood that I've cut up here. Whilst it did look good with them all just kind of leaning up against the side wall and everything, they were actually cut to a certain length to be nice and tight fitting so they could actually be proper vertical in the enclosure. So quite often when you see people scaping out enclosures, a lot of the time they kind of ramp up everything towards the back and there's nothing that's really like a solid structure in the foreground. So what I plan to do is at least one piece of this wood in each enclosure. I want it to be a bit of a foreground piece so that if the geckos decide to come down onto the ground and start hunting around not far from the front of the enclosure at night, they're going to be front and centre. So, I mean, granted, 9 times out of 10 these cryptic geckos are probably going to be hanging around on the background or behind something or whatever, but I want to be able to sneak up on them when I can and actually see them, you know, hopefully hunting for a few of these vertical pieces. And if you have those kind of staggered like that, it gives a whole new meaning to depth perception in your terrarium as well. So anyway, as I said before I got my ramble on, let's crack on and let's put this all together. Okay, so we've cut our little background here. Now all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a couple of bits of double-sided tape just to try to make it a little bit more permanent, try to stop any bugs or anything like that getting in behind everything. I've just done a bit of a test fit of this background. Ooh, almost dropped the scissors on my toes, that would have been great fun. Yeah, I've done a bit of a test fit on this background as well, just to make sure that it fits, and it is very snug, which is quite good, because then it means that you're not going to get all the insects and stuff in the back of it. That's the last thing you're going to need. So, there's no method to my madness with this double-sided tape. Just trying to find any areas that might come up, and usually it's around the edges. Pardon me. So we'll get that going. I'll get rid of the other side and then we'll come back and we'll put it in. Alright, so I finally got all the backing off that double-sided tape. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wedge it into place. As I said, it is a nice tight fit. I am going to try to keep it nice and tight to the top too, just because I hate for the geckos to get up in that top lip. Just pressing that double-sided tape onto the background. Now the reason I'm using double-sided tape is it's somewhat easy to remove, so if I do decide to go down the route of those cork bark backgrounds, then at least I've got that going for me. Usually I'd use just like a couple of dabs of silicone as well, but you know, that'll do the job. Not to mention the fact that the geckos are going to go back in tonight and I don't want silicone curing and that horrible vinegar smell disturbing my geckos or potentially harming them. So that's just an easy way just to get it in there and get it done. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the other couple and then we'll revisit for the plants. So I've just gone ahead and I've got those 3 backgrounds in place now. They're looking pretty good, to be honest. I think once we do cover these up with a few plants and you know, logs and stuff like that, these will actually look alright. So the next step going forward is we're going to start getting a few of these plants in. I've got a bit of an arrangement here. I'm just going to try a few things out. This is a little umbrella plant. I know that these guys do really well under low light. The other main one that I've got, parlor palm. Now, as you can see, it's quite a bit taller than the terrarium, but I'm going to split that into a few bunches, hopefully, so then each terrarium should hopefully get a piece of that. Also, I've got this, what is this little guy? The terrace fern. Hopefully that's going to be another good little low light species. I've also got another little ground cover Fijiensis as well. And the other thing that I've got, what have I got here? It's a club moss. It's a hardy creeping club moss. So I'm going to break that up into a few different pieces as well and surround that in these terrariums. So for a substrate, I'm actually going to use a little bit of dirt out of each of these pots. I know it's kind of going against the rules, but you know what? These plants love that sort of stuff, so I'm going to keep a bit of it in there. But mainly I'm going to have the coir peat as most of the substrate. I'm not actually going to put Yuki mulch in these terrariums just because I don't want the geckos to be chomping on that so much. Some of these geckos are a little bit expensive, so yeah, that's the last thing I need is for them to be eating any of that. And if I've got a bit of room, I've actually just recently collected a little bit of leaf litter, which will help with isopods and slaters and stuff like that I'm going to be putting in these too, hopefully. As I haven't checked my colonies of late, but I think they might have bloomed a little bit, so hopefully we should get some of those in there too. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and knock off some dirt out of these pots, and then we're going to start planting these out. Alright, so I've just gone ahead and I've knocked out all the dirt from that parlor palm in particular, because I want that to be a bit of a feature piece in most of these terrariums. I absolutely love this plant. I reckon it just looks awesome. I've got it in my green tree python enclosure. I've got it in my green stream frog enclosure as well. But yeah, what I've done is you just knock the dirt out, and each one of these little palms becomes a little individual plant like that. You can spread them around and share the love. So I might even keep a couple of the bigger ones that are a bit outgrown for this terrarium for some other enclosures as well. So next step from there, so I'm simply going to take some of the dirt that I've already just saved from those palms. I've moved all the coir peat just towards the front of the terrariums in here. I'm just going to place a bit of this at the back, so hopefully everything going forward. The geckos won't actually come in contact with this, but it just gives something a little bit more nutrient rich than the coir peat for the plants to grab a hold of. As I said, I am going to top this out a little bit as well, so I will use some stuff on top of the base of these substrates as well, just to kind of cover it in a little bit. Alright, so let's see what I've got here. I'm also somewhat trying to remember whose terrarium's whose. I'm going to need a little bit more dirt than that, I think. Obviously I want to make it look good as well. So the 3 leaf-tail species I've got, probably going to butcher these names like most of my Latin, but I've got a wide berber, a Maritzi, and a cornutus as well. So these guys are a little bit more harder to come by than your Sydney broadtails, which were my first true reptile that I kept as a youngster. My parents bought a property that backed onto a bit of sandstone country, well not country but suburbia, that these little geckos absolutely love to hang out in. And during my few years there, I managed to catch a couple, put them into my bedroom in another couple of tubs that I had underneath the bed. So keep in mind I was probably about, I don't know, 11 years old or something at the time that this is going on, so this is well and truly before I knew that reptile licenses were an actual thing. But it was a pretty cool time to be keeping my first animals. I was trying to catch bugs out of the garden and stuff just to keep them going, but as you do as a young kid. But I'll never forget it. They used to be all over the brickwork at night, absolutely everywhere. They were monsters of little geckos from what I remember as well. I'll never forget the sound that they used to make when you try to pick them up. So they were the first reptiles that I actually kept at all. The Sydney broadtail or leaf-tail gecko. Fantastic little animals. I'd actually love to get my hands on some too, so you know, hopefully I'll be able to relive my childhood somewhat through those, but for now I'm just going to keep these 3 wonders. So these guys come from varying types of forestry type habitats, and they get to different sizes as well. So the Y Berber that I've got is an adult male. He's a couple of years old already. I believe he's 2 or 3 years old. The Maritzi that I've got is a juvenile male. He's actually just going through a bit of a shed at the moment as well, which is quite cool. So it means he's growing around a bit. I've just realised I've put these all on the same side. I better change it up a little bit. Otherwise it's going to get a little bit mundane, isn't it? The last thing I want to do is make these identical to each other. That'd make for a bit of a boring look. Might even do 2 separate ones on this one. 2 smaller bunches. So, yeah, sorry, the little male Maritzi is a little youngster. I know of another couple of people with them, so hopefully I'll pair him up at some stage. And the cornutus, the bloke that I got all these geckos off, Mr. Jason Rogers, believes it's a young female, which would be fantastic if it is, because usually females of most species are a little bit harder to come by. And they're, I believe, one of Australia's largest leaf-tail gecko species, and they kind of top out with a snout to vent length of about 15 centimetres. So once you include a tail in there, if they've got a good sized tail, they might be a little bit over 20 centimetres, which is quite a big gecko if you think about it. You know, these terrariums are 30 centimetres wide, so it's almost as wide as those. That will be awesome. I can't wait for them to get bigger. Obviously the Cornutus won't be able to live out its life in here, but you know, a single Maritzi or a single white Berber would probably be alright in here long term. So probably the next thing I'm actually going to put into one of these terrariums is I'm going to do a little little umbrella plant into that right hand side one there, because that's the one that the white Berber is going to go into. Might see if I can get a bit of better angle on these two, because there's a bit of reflection from the reptile lights. So I'll just see how I can do. I just managed to turn a few of the reptile lights off, so hopefully that makes it a little bit easier viewing for everyone there at home. This is the little umbrella plant that I'm just putting in this side over here for the white Berber to climb all over. These guys, unlike some of the other species from Madagascar and the other exotic species that you get around the world, these guys have claws. They don't have those kind of sticky pads that can grip to glass and stuff like that. So in a way I kind of like it, because it means you don't have to necessarily clean gecko poo off glass, which is one of my biggest pet hates about a lot of the geckos that you get in Australia, like the Strophs and stuff and the velvets. But in saying that, it also means that they need to be able to climb onto things to be able to get around the shop and everything. So I need to be able to provide them with good branches, good cover, so they can actually do that. Pardon me. So that's why I found a lot of this timber where it's, you know, very nicely covered in good thick bark, so these little guys can climb around all over the shop and make sure that they've got something to hold on to. Last thing you want to do is kind of not give them an option to be able to get onto anything. So yeah, at the end of the day, I want to be able to provide these guys with the best that I can. I'll kind of just go through and finish these enclosures off now, one at a time, rather than focusing on each individual piece going into each, just because then I can kind of just spend a bit more time making sure the ground cover's good, making sure those plants are all covered in, packed down nicely. So the next step that I'm going to take is I'm actually going to put the lid of this enclosure back on. Better unlock that so I got some better access. Maybe that'll stop a bit of the reflection for you guys too. Sorry I didn't think about that earlier. But as I was saying, these bits of timber, they're cut to the right length, so I can make a couple of nice vertical pieces throughout this terrarium too, so I can hopefully see these guys climbing around a little bit more. It's going to be a bit of a game of spot the gecko, but hopefully this works out to be quite a cool look as well. Okay, so I'll get this lid back into place if I can. So to make these branches a little bit more permanent and a little bit more safe so that they don't move around, I'm actually just going to tack a little screw into the top of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to position these as to how I want them through the mesh, and I'm actually going to use the mesh just as a pinpoint to be able to get these guys to stay into place. So all I'm doing is I'm just using a tiny screw, so it's not going to make much of a hole through the mesh, just in case I don't want a big hole in there for later on. You know, if you decide to repurpose a terrarium, the last thing you want to do is ruin one straight up. So I'm just going to make a couple of these, excuse that, a couple of these branches fixed, and then I've got one leaning up against the back just so I can get in there and move things around if needed. I've also got to just make sure that I've got enough place for a water bowl underneath. You see there's a little bit of play in that branch as well, so what I'll do is I'll just pack it underneath with a bit of the coir peat so it doesn't wobble around, but at least you know it's not going to fall over on anybody in there, or any gecko rather. Alright, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave a little area here at the front for a little water bowl. And then I might just add in a bit of that ground cover plant over in that corner for this guy as well. Alright, so I'm just going to sneak a little bit of that moss, pardon me, I'm losing my voice. Sneak a little bit of that moss in there. So hopefully the little basic LEDs that I've got will be enough to keep these guys all cranking. Pretty sure they will be. It's definitely going to be a game of spot the gecko in these tanks, but I really like a heavily planted tank. I reckon it just looks fantastic. You almost can't beat it. I'm going to make that branch a little bit more vertical too, just to give me some space down this front right corner for that water bowl. Alright, that's looking pretty good. The only thing to add in now is a little bit of leaf litter in a water bowl, and then I'm going to repeat the process across the other couple of tanks. So I've collected some fresh leaf litter, not too long ago actually. This is just off a gum tree out the front. I think it's some, I could be wrong, but I want to call it a scribble bark or something like that. I'm just going to pop a few of these leaves in. Not going to go overboard with it. That'll just give somewhere for the little springtails and isopods and little slaters and all sorts of little critters just to hide out in. As I said, I'm not going to go overboard. I don't want to, make these geckos struggle to find food or anything, but it just gives them something else to forage around between. And I'm just going to pop a little water bowl down in the corner there. If I try to aim it right, I might get it just underneath the drip from that Miss King tap, so then it fills up on that as well. Alright, I'm going to go ahead, do a time lapse. We're going to put these other two enclosures together, water them in, and then we're going to go and put some geckos in them. So these were pretty easy little terrariums to put together. Not too hard. I'm just going through and just giving the plants a little bit of a soaking just to try to get some water into their roots. Help them take off. I'm really happy with how these have come out. I can't wait to see them underneath the LED light. So they just look like little snippets of rainforest, which is exactly what I was hoping for. I think leaf-tailed geckos have definitely got to be some of my favourite types of geckos. I'm actually quite a fan of any sort of reptile or amphibian that's very cryptic. I love that whole idea of being able to blend in with their environment, and it's kind of fun being able to look at these enclosures and go, I wonder where it is, and spend a little bit of time really in depth having to look around and trying to find the animal itself. Even with how these enclosures were set up previously, it was kind of hard to find them at times, and they were very, very basic terrariums. So I'm probably going to put these animals in and almost never see them again, so it'll be good to be able to interact with them and spend a little bit of time just trying to figure them out and find where they are. The only slight concern that I do have is just in particular with the younger animals is finding how they go and find their food and stuff like that. So, I'll have to be watching quite intently to find fecals and stuff like that just to make sure that they are eating. If I find that they're not finding food, probably the first thing I'd do is I'd take out some of the leaf litter just to try to open up that ground cover, so then the crickets and stuff like that are going in there then aren't hiding anywhere. Makes them a little bit more obvious to the animal themselves. I'm going to do one last thing, and that's putting in some bugs. Should hopefully have a fair few springtails and hopefully a few slaters that I can knock in here. I have to check out the colonies and see how they're doing, because I have been smashing the slaters in particular. I think the springtails should be okay to go in. That's the next step, so let's check that out. So I've definitely been smashed a little bit for for springtails and slaters and stuff like that. But we'll go ahead and we'll knock a few of these guys in there, just to start it off. It's the right kind of environment. It's going to be nice and humid in there for them. So I'll knock a few of these in there and then we'll see how the slaters look. So I'm not going to go overboard with it for now because I do want to keep the culture alive and going. But I'll pick up a few bits of this charcoal here and tap a few of these bugs out. I'll even just pop a few bits of this charcoal into these enclosures just to give the slaters something to, the springtails something to bind onto when they need to. Just put them in little corners and things where it's a little bit more discreet. But at least this will get a little population going inside these terrariums. So this is my tiny little slater colony. I think I started with about 5 of these guys. They seem to do quite well in here. This is a tiny little what do you call it? Just like a little tub. It's probably about 2 or 3 litres. I can't quite remember how many litres this is. But all I do is keep them on a bit of Yuki mulch. There's a little bit of coir peat underneath there as well. They seem to live off that almost. And a couple of bits of toilet paper roll in here as well where they just like to hide out underneath it. These will act as a bit of a food source for these guys as well. At least the smaller two I think would actually be bothered catching these guys, whereas the bigger Maritzi might not be. Oh, sorry, the bigger Waberba. You can see there's actually quite a few down in there, which is quite cool. So I'll just pick up a small handful of them each and put them inside these terrariums, just to get it started. And I'll probably have to leave this little colony alone for a little while. A few of them scurried off there. You can see a little bit of mould formed in the corner there. That's just because I've just dumped a bunch of yeast in there. These guys like to live off rotting matter, so it'll be perfect for breaking down a little bit of waste. Hopefully they'll take to breeding inside the actual terrariums themselves. Alright, so I've made a fantastic mess here. I'm going to go and put these enclosures aside for now, tidy up all the mess that I've made, and then I'm going to take it upstairs and I'll go and show you these little geckos that we're going to release into these enclosures. Our time is out. Your time is out. Running away from living like the dead. Running away. I'm shaking. I've just brought these awesome terrariums upstairs. I can't get over how fantastic these look. My wifey's definitely a lot happier now too. Looks a little bit more attractive to the eye. Hooked up the Mist King system, so that's all back in place. Put all the lines back together. Accidentally forgot to turn it off and flooded the floor a little bit. Oops. Got the thermostat probe in place, got our fans in place too, so you know, when that heat does get up in this bedroom, not that it gets as hot as the garage, at least that can cool them down a bit. Not only that, but it's good to have a bit of fan or, you know, breeze blowing on the plants too, because that'll stimulate a little bit of growth and stronger stems. But now we got to put these little guys back in their terrariums. So I'm going to put the Berber in that enclosure there, the cornutus and this one here with that awesome big thick branch. I really love that branch. And then we're going to put the little Maritzi over in this tank here. So the gorgeous little guy in here, this is the Berber leaf tail gecko. Hopefully I can hold on to him and get a bit of a better shot. So here he is, stunning little gecko. You can see how these guys will just disappear so easily in their environments. Just going to try to pop him onto this tree branch here. Oh wait. Look at that. If you saw him from a distance, you'd just think he was a bit of a twig or something like that. Those eyes are absolutely fantastic. So this guy's fully grown, not a big species. That tail's so ornate as well. Little tubercles and things like that are hanging off it. Yeah, he blends in so well to his environment. Well, there he goes. I think you misjudged that landing there, didn't you, mate? Come on. There we go. There's another good look at him there. I'll try to refocus the camera. Stunning little gecko. See if he wants to climb up these branches. Anyway. Let's have a look at the smaller two, hey? So next on the list is the little cornutus girl, or hopeful girl. She's only tiny at the moment. When you compare her to my hand and how big she's actually going to get, she's going to end up being such a big, stunning gecko. She's probably the most easy going out of the three leafies. If you can call it easy going, she's probably just, you know, a little bit more tolerant. Ooh, wrong way. There we go. Such a beautiful little animal. There we go. Go onto your branch. What a fantastic little animal. How gorgeous are their little eyes. That's definitely one of the most attractive parts of the cornutus. Sorry for the odd angles, it's tight quarters here. They just blend in so well. So last and definitely not least is the little Maritzi. This guy is tiny. He's definitely going to disappear in this little terrarium. But we'll get him in, get him settled, and give the enclosures an awesome misting. The Mist King system. So this guy is tiny, as you can see. Beautiful little ornate tail to him as well. I'll see if I can encourage him to drop in here. Oh, there he goes. Just gonna close that door a little bit in case he does a bit of a bolt. So how awesome is he? You can definitely see he's going to grow into his enclosure okay. He's got a bit of space. Alright, let's give these guys a bit of a drenching and wrap things up. So I've already got the Mist King program to come on a few times a day. It seems we've got the new plants in there. I'm just gonna get this cranking. Give it a little bit of a going over. So we need these plants nice and hydrated. Not to mention that one of the geckos is in shed, so it's only gonna help them out. You can see how good that is. That's going to keep these plants well and truly hydrated. And all of it looking just lush and perfect. Alright guys, I'm absolutely stoked with how these enclosures are looking. I don't know what else to say. I'm a little bit gobsmacked at the moment. They came together probably a little bit better than what I thought they were going to be honest. I'm going to be adding in a few more springtails and slaters and things as I go. But these little geckos are definitely going to be a lot happier with all this foliage and all this cover, not to mention the backgrounds they can climb on and get their claws into. So I'm absolutely stoked to have these, and definitely a bit of a feature point in the bedroom now, that's for sure. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Make sure to like the video, make sure to comment on it, make sure to subscribe to the channel more importantly, and thank you to everyone that is watching. I just cracked 300 subscribers, which to be honest, just for me kind of rambling and having a little bit of fun doing these videos is absolutely awesome. I really appreciate the support. So yeah, make sure you share this around with your friends as well, and get herping, get into these little critters, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks guys.
See out of the way that I'm going down, I feel so alive.